Hey, it's Surfing Victorian Report, Friday, the 24th of July, 2026. G'day everyone and welcome back to Hey, it's Surfing. Well, the Great Southern Ocean is still carrying on like somebody forgot to turn it off. Victoria has another large, cold and very windy day ahead with plenty of swell hitting the coast, but very few places escaping the strong west to southwesterly airflow. So today's forecast isn't about finding waves, they're everywhere. It's about finding a wave that isn't being blown halfway to New Zealand. Halfway to New Zealand? God, send them the closeouts. Keep the good ones here. Yeah, Dicky. Bloody Kiwis would love the closeouts, wouldn't they? Gee, don't get on the wrong side of those lot, mate. This morning we'll check the Surf Coast and Torquay, head across to the Mornington Peninsula, continue through Phillip Island and the Bass Coast and finish in East Gippsland. Then we'll look at the weekend and the next possible change arriving early next week. And somewhere in there, Keith, we'll explain why standing in freezing rain is called living the dream. You're living the dream, Dicky. Let's head out around the coast. First, let's separate this morning's observations from the forecast. At around 7:30 this morning, Cape Otway was recording a west-southwesterly wind near 20 knots, gusting to roughly 30 knots. South Channel Island was recording a westerly around 22 knots. Wilson's Promontory was closer to 29 knots, gusting near 38, while Hogan Island was already reaching approximately 35 knots with 40-knot gusts. Garbo Island in the Far East was also gusting above 30 knots. So the strong airflow isn't waiting until later. It is already well established across Bass Strait. 40-knot gusts? That's enough to blow the price of a pie up another $2. I don't eat pies, Dicky, but you enjoy the price rise, mate. The Bureau has a strong wind warning current for the Central Coast. West to southwesterly winds are forecast at 25 to 30 knots this morning, tending westerly at 20 to 30 knots. Seas remain around 2 to 3 metres. The offshore southwest swell is forecast at 2.5 to 3 metres across central waters, increasing to between 3 and 5 metres west of Cape Otway. Showers will continue moving through and conditions will remain cold and unsettled. Those are offshore marine measurements. They are not breaking wave heights. The size at each beach will vary dramatically according to exposure, shelter, swell direction, reef shape and local sandbanks. So don't ring Keith from Casey Corner asking where your 5-metre wave is. He's busy pretending the microphone's waterproof. Yeah, well, in between those rain squalls. Geez, yesterday was an issue, wasn't it, Dicky? Bloody sure was. We had to have 2 bloody goes at it. So on the Surf Coast, this is once again the clear statewide choice. Not because conditions are perfect, they aren't. But the established Torquay reefs offer the greatest protection from the westerly wind while still receiving plenty of energy from the southwest groundswell. The open water models are carrying very substantial swell energy around the Torquay region with periods close to 14 or 15 seconds. That is modelled deep water energy rather than the actual breaking height at each reef. Based on the Bureau's offshore forecast and local exposure, the protected Torquay reefs should generally produce surf around 3 to 5 feet. Bells Beach and Winkipop are more likely to sit between 5 to 8 feet, with occasional larger sets possible when the longer period pulses arrive. The open reefs west of Bells will be much larger again and suitable for only experienced surfers. 5 to 8 feet of bells, excellent. Keith's packed his board, his wetsuit and 17 excuses. Yeah, a bit like everyone else, I reckon, today, Dicky. Put those excuses to good use. The wind will remain strong throughout the day, so there isn't a generally calm window. The best opportunity is through the morning, particularly at reefs offering direct shelter from the west and southwest. As the wind strengthens or swings further south, more texture will reach even the established protected breaks. The tide at Lorne reached a high of approximately 2.2 metres shortly after 7 this morning. It then falls toward a low around 12:18 before rising to another high around 6:24 this evening. At Point Lonsdale, high tide was around 7:38 with a low near 12:27 and another high around 6:49 tonight. That means the reefs will lose water through the morning. The falling tide may sharpen some sections, but it will also expose more rock and make entries and exits less forgiving. The afternoon incoming tide may add consistency, although the wind will remain the dominant factor. The main hazards are powerful sweep, large outside sets, slippery rock platforms and difficult exits during stronger squalls. For experienced surfers at the protected reef, the Surf Coast rates around 7 out of 10. For everyone else, Torquay's smaller inside options are the sensible call. Sensible? Steady on, Keith. You'll frighten the viewers. Yeah, mate, look at that bloody set rolling in. Whew. You'd have to have a few kangaroos short in the top paddock to be out and amongst this mess here. But I'm sure those viewers may find somewhere. Moving across to Mornington Peninsula, and there is certainly no shortage of size. The Bureau's central marine forecast supports a large southwest swell across the open coast, while nearshore modelling at Gunnamatta carries roughly 4 metres of southwest energy at around 15 to 16 seconds early today. Again, that model figure describes nearshore open water energy, not the height of every breaking wave. Our estimate for Gunnamatta, St Andrews and the more exposed back beaches is generally 8 to 12 feet, with occasional larger clean-up sets possible at the deepest banks. Portsea may receive similar or greater size where the swell finds direct exposure. 8 to 12 feet? That's not a beach break. That's the ocean serving an eviction notice. The problem is the wind. West to southwesterly airflow at this strength is cross onshore or onshore across much of the peninsula's open coast. Expect rough faces, strong lateral sweep, difficult paddle outs and takeoff zones that continually move along the beach. The longer period will also produce deceptive pauses. You may see several smaller waves followed by a much larger set breaking way outside the regular lineup. There is no strong quality window on the exposed beaches today. The least difficult period is likely to be through the morning before the afternoon sea state becomes even more developed. Flinders and the Western Port side will offer much smaller surf and greater protection from the swell. However, Western Port is still forecast to carry westerly winds around 15 to 20 knots, reaching 25 knots west of Sandy Point. So sheltered does not necessarily mean calm. Using Point Lonsdale as the broad oceanside tide reference, the peninsula is moving from its morning high toward a low around 12:27. The tide then falls through the afternoon. The lower water may reveal more defined banks, but it will also strengthen rips through deep gutters and make some inside sections extremely shallow. The open Mornington beaches rate around 3 out of 10. There is enormous raw power, but very little quality or control. 3 out of 10? 3 out of 10? Still better than Keith's first attempt at charging the camera batteries this morning, and even the attempt from last night. Yeah, I know, bloody oath, Dicky. We're still running on, 40% here, mate? That's all good. We might get through this bloody report before it wraps up. And I know we had some technical issues yesterday. You filmed after a report with a lunchbox. No idea what that means, Dicky, but thanks for that insight, mate. Phillip Island is also receiving serious swell today. The latest model issued early this morning places Woolamai's nearshore open water swell around 3 metres at 15 seconds during the morning, building toward 3.5 metres at 15 seconds around lunchtime. That is the most powerful modelled pulse at Woolamai today. The forecast also carries cross-onshore winds, so the exposed beaches will be large, raw and heavily disturbed. Breaking surf at Woolamai is estimated around 8 to 12 feet, with larger waves possible on the strongest banks. Forest caves and the fully exposed Bass Coast will also carry significant size. Smiths Beach, Surfers Point and YCW will be much smaller, but those locations will still feel the effects of the wind, current and rising ocean energy. 12 feet of Woolamai, lovely, bloody lovely. That you paddle out, Keith. I'll stay here and make sure nobody steals the heater. Well, you keep the bloody fire going, Dicky. I'll be back soon, I reckon. Interestingly, the observed wind at Reel was relatively light earlier this morning, but Reel sits inside Western Port and does not represent conditions on the exposed ocean side of the island. The broader Western Port forecast still calls for westerly winds around 15 to 20 knots, reaching 25 knots near the western entrance. At Stony Point, high tide arrives around 8:15 this morning. The tide then falls toward a low near 1:31 this afternoon before rising strongly toward another high around 7:35 tonight. That significant tidal movement will increase flow through Western Port's entrances, channels and reef systems. Expect strong sweep, deep gutters, shifting banks and difficult exits. There is no standout window at Woolamai today. For most surfers, the better choice is a smaller protected break or staying onshore and appreciating the spectacle. Phillip Island and the Bass Coast rate around 3 out of 10 overall. Watching from the car still counts. You're surfing emotionally. Great advice, Dicky. Great insight, mate. Wisdom abundant, Dicky. Wisdom abundant. Moving into East Gippsland and the wind becomes even more serious. The Bureau has issued a gale warning for the East Gippsland coast. West to southwesterly winds are forecast between 25 to 30 knots, reaching 35 knots at times. Seas are running around 2.5 to 3 metres, increasing to 3 or 4 metres through the eastern offshore waters. The west to southwesterly swell is forecast at 2 to 3 metres inshore and between 2.5 and 4 metres offshore. This morning, Garbo Island was already recording a west-southwesterly wind around 28 knots, gusting near 34 knots. So, as with the western coast, the stronger conditions are already in place. The strong westerly component means that offshore swell will not translate evenly onto every East Gippsland beach. Around Lake's entrance, estimated surf may remain closer to 1 to 3 feet because much of the energy is poorly aligned with the local coastline. 90 Mile Beach could see 2 to 4 foot peaks where the banks find the swell. Cape Conran, Marlow and more exposed stretches towards Malakuta may receive 4 to 6 foot surf or larger, but those beaches will also be heavily wind affected. These are estimates based on offshore swell direction and local exposure rather than direct observations at every break. 4 metres offshore and 2 feet at Lake's entrance. Even the swell saw the parking situation and kept going. At Lake's entrance, high tide was around 5:02 this morning. Low tide arrives at approximately 9:51, followed by another high around 5:18 this afternoon. The morning incoming to low transition may increase movement around the entrance, while the afternoon rise will again strengthen flow through the channel. The largest hazard is the condition of the ocean bars and entrances. Modest beach surf does not mean a safe bar. Strong wind, offshore swell and opposing tidal flow can combine to create sweep, confused and dangerous water. East Gippsland rates around 3.5 out of 10. There may be isolated sheltered options, but most exposed beaches will be rough and difficult. Across the Central Coast, tides are generally falling through the morning toward lunchtime lows. Western Port reaches its low during the early afternoon while Lake's entrance moves through a morning low before rising again. The falling tide will sharpen reefs and expose more rock. At the beach breaks, it may reveal the banks, but it can also strengthen rips and make the inside sections shallow and abrupt. The main statewide hazard today is the combination of swell, wind and cold. The Bureau advises that wind gusts may be roughly 40% stronger than the average forecast wind. It also warns that the largest individual waves can reach approximately twice the forecast significant wave height. Twice the forecast height? What? Bloody hell. That's not a set wave. That's a surprise building inspection. What building? Towering above you, Dicky. You're such a short ass. Don't you have a go about my bloody stature, Keith? Fair enough. Anyway, expect powerful lateral currents, rapidly shifting lineups, long period clean-up sets and difficult exits. Water temperature around Woolamai is close to 14 degrees Celsius, so cold water fatigue also becomes a genuine consideration during longer sessions. 14 degrees? Perfect temperature for storing prawns. Righto. Looking ahead to Saturday, conditions remain windy across the central coast. Westerly winds are forecast around 20 to 25 knots, reaching 30 knots during the morning and early afternoon. The southwest swell eases slightly to around 2 to 2.5 metres, with 2 to 4 metres still expected through the west. Protected surf coast reefs remain the best option. Mornington and Phillip Island still stay rough and heavily wind affected. East Gippsland remains particularly serious on Saturday. Gale force westerly winds may continue offshore with large seas and substantial west to southwesterly swell persisting through the far east. So Saturday's forecast is Friday wearing a different hat? Yeah, that's correct, Dicky. Yep, we can expect the same for Saturday, mate. Well, next up, Sunday. I'm sure you know how the week works, Dicky. So here's Sunday. Sunday brings the first meaningful easing across central Victoria. Central coast winds drop towards 15 to 20 knots, while the southwest swell settles to around 1.5 to 2 metres, increasing to 2 or 3 metres through the west. Inside Western Port, winds are expected to ease toward 10 to 15 knots and may turn light northwesterly during the afternoon. That should reopen more options around Phillip Island and the peninsula, although the early wind may still leave some texture. The surf coast remains the safest quality choice, but the surf will be smaller and more approachable. East Gippsland may take longer to settle, with the fresh westerly winds and significant southerly swell likely to linger through Sunday. Monday currently looks like the best open beach opportunity. A high moves into the Tasman Sea, with northwesterly winds expected inside Western Port before turning northerly later. Seas should fall below 1 metre. The established swell will be smaller, but Mornington and Phillip Island should benefit from the cleaner offshore airflow. Model guidance for Woolamai currently favours Monday afternoon with a southwest swell around 1.3 metres at 11 seconds and cross offshore winds. That is model guidance rather than a guarantee, but it supports Monday as a much cleaner and more manageable option. Smaller waves and offshore wind and no gale warning sounds dangerously enjoyable. It sure does, Dicky. I might have to get out there, I think. The next cold front is expected to approach Western Victoria early in the week. From Tuesday onward, confidence becomes lower. The next cold front is expected to approach Western Victoria early in the week. Longer range models suggest another southwest swell may develop around the middle of next week, but its exact arrival time, size and accompanying wind remain uncertain. Treat that as an early signal rather than a locked-in forecast. In other words, something's coming. Could be swell, could be rain, could be another flat camera battery. Oh, get stuffed, Dicky. You going to harp on about this flat camera battery? Is that what... Move on. So the final call for Friday, the 24th of July, is straightforward. The surf coast is comfortably the best region, but the established protected reefs are the only sensible targets. Torquay's inside reefs should offer the most manageable surf, while Bell's Beach and Winkipop remain larger, more powerful and suitable for experienced surfers. The Mornington Peninsula has enormous raw swell, but very little quality. Gunnamatta, St Andrews and Portsea will be large, rough and heavily swept. Phillip Island is also serious, with Woolamai carrying some of today's most powerful mottled swell and very poor wind conditions. East Gippsland remains exposed to gale force airflow, particularly toward the far east, while Lake's entrance may stay much smaller because of the westerly swell direction. For most Victorian surfers, today is not a day to chase maximum size. Find shelter, choose a break well within your ability, or wait for conditions to ease. Sunday should begin the recovery, while Monday currently offers the best chance of cleaner open beach surf. There you go. The official forecast is use your brain. Keith's left his in the camera bag, so there should be one spare. You cheeky little turd, Dicky. Well, that's your Victorian surf report for Friday, the 24th of July. Thanks for watching Hey Hey It's Surfing. Stay warm, surf within your limits, and we'll see you around the Victorian coast. And this time, Keith, check that the little red light is actually on.